The communications console beeped at exactly 347 hours, pulling Hyun-woo from his third cup of coffee. He had been stationed at Ganymede Listening Post for 6 months now, and most nights passed without incident. The usual traffic consisted of mining reports, supply requests, and the occasional drunk message from lonely colonists on the outer moons. This signal was different. Hyun-woo leaned forward, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. The signal was weak, fragmented, and definitely not human. His heartbeat quickened as he routed it through the translation algorithms. The computer struggled with the alien language structure, but after 2 minutes of processing, words began to appear on his screen. Help. Under attack. Kepler sector. Research convoy. They're killing us. The message repeated 3 more times before dissolving into static. Hyun-woo's hands were shaking as he pulled up the signal's origin point. The Kepler sector was 47 light-years away, right on the edge of what humans called the frontier zone. He had never received a direct distress call from an alien species before. Nobody at Ganymede Station had. He immediately forwarded the signal to his supervisor and began a second-level analysis. The translation software identified the language as Velen, a species humanity had only made brief contact with at the last Galactic Assembly meeting. They were peaceful aquatic beings who spent most of their time studying star formations and cosmic phenomena. The idea of them being under attack seemed wrong, like hearing about someone bombing a library. Within 10 minutes, Dr. Ji-won arrived at the communications bay. She was the station's xenolinguist, a thin woman in her early 40s who could speak 7 alien languages fluently. She pushed her glasses up her nose as she reviewed Hyun-woo's analysis. "This is authentic," she said quietly. "The grammar structure, the dialect markers, the distress codes. This is a legitimate cry for help. What do we do?" Hyun-woo asked. The signal was addressed to the Galactic Peacekeeping Assembly, not to us. We just intercepted it, Ji-won bit her lip, thinking. The Galactic Assembly was the official body that handled conflicts and emergencies in known space. They had strict protocols, committees, and approval processes. They were also famously slow. A request for military assistance could take weeks to process. "The Assembly is headquartered in the core worlds," Ji-won said. "Even if they received this signal at the same time we did, their nearest response fleet is at least 3 weeks away from the Kepler sector." 3 weeks? Hyun-woo felt sick. "Those people will be dead or gone by then." "Probably," Ji-won agreed. She looked at him with serious eyes. "The question is whether we forward this to Earth Command. Officially, this isn't our problem. Unofficially," she didn't need to finish the sentence, "humanity had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. They were the newcomers, the primitives from a backwater planet that had nearly destroyed itself with nuclear weapons before finally reaching the stars. Other species watched them carefully, waiting for humans to prove they were either civilized or dangerous." Hyun-woo made his decision. "I'm sending it to Earth Command. If they want to ignore it, that's their choice. But I won't let people die because I was worried about protocol." Ji-won nodded slowly. "I'll support your report. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." The signal reached Earth Command within minutes. From there, it bounced to Titan Naval Base, where the Terran Defense Coalition kept its rapid response fleets. Commander Tae-yang was in his quarters, reviewing tactical reports, when the priority message appeared on his personal terminal. Tae-yang was 53 years old and had spent 35 of those years in military service. He had fought in the colony wars, survived 3 ship destructions, and earned more medals than he cared to count. He had also buried too many good people. The gray in his hair was earned honestly. He read the intercepted distress call 3 times. Then he pulled up everything the TDC database had on the Velen Accord. Peaceful species. No military capability. Population of 4 billion spread across 2 moon colonies. They made beautiful art and published groundbreaking research on stellar evolution. They had never harmed anyone. The attackers were identified as Krathic Dominion forces. Tae-yang knew that name well. The Krathic were space pirates, raiders who preyed on weak targets and avoided serious fights. They took slaves, stole technology, and disappeared into the lawless regions of space. The Galactic Assembly had filed dozens of formal complaints against them over the years. But complaints didn't stop ships from burning. Tae-yang called his senior staff into the briefing room at 0500 hours. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Jae-hyun, arrived first. The young man was brilliant with numbers and could calculate firing solutions in his head faster than most computers. Captain Min-seo came next. still wearing her workout clothes and carrying a protein shake. She commanded the destroyer Iron Monsoon and had a reputation for aggressive tactics. "We have a situation," Tae-yang began, projecting the distress call onto the main screen. Everyone listened in silence as the Velen message played. "That's 47 light-years away," Jae-hyun said immediately. "Standard transit time would be 3 days. If we push the engines and use the Theta wormhole, we could cut that to 14 hours, but it's risky." "Define risky," Tae-yang said. "The Theta wormhole is unstable. Navigation will be difficult. There's a 12% chance of catastrophic drive failure. And if we take 3 days, those people will definitely be dead or enslaved, sir." Min-seo leaned forward. "Are we really considering this? We're talking about starting a fight with the Krathic Dominion over aliens we've barely met. The Assembly will lose their minds." "The Assembly isn't here," Tae-yang replied. "We are. Those researchers sent a distress call because they believed someone would help them. They were wrong about who would receive it, but that doesn't change their situation." He looked around the room at his officers. These were people who had trained their entire lives for combat. They came from Earth, a world that had forged them in fire, high gravity, dangerous weather, predators that could kill a human in seconds, diseases that had wiped out millions before medicine caught up. Humans had survived all of it by being stubborn, adaptable, and willing to fight when necessary. "I'm taking Battle Group Perseus to the Kepler sector," Tae-yang announced. "We'll assess the situation and respond accordingly. If anyone has objections, voice them now." Nobody spoke. "Good. We launch in 90 minutes. Get your ships ready." As the officers filed out, Tae-yang stared at the star map. He was about to take 6 warships into a potential combat zone without official authorization. If this went wrong, his career was over. But if he did nothing, he would have to live with the knowledge that he had let innocent people die because he was afraid of paperwork. The choice was obvious. It had always been obvious. Humanity had learned long ago that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hard thing to do. That lesson had been written in blood across 10,000 years of history. The fleet would fly. The wrong hands had intercepted the distress call, but perhaps they were exactly the right hands after all. The hangar bay of Titan Naval Base was a controlled chaos of movement and sound. Crews rushed between ships, loading ammunition, checking systems, and running final diagnostics. The 6 vessels of Battle Group Perseus stood ready, their hulls dark and angular, designed for function rather than beauty. These were warships built by a species that understood war intimately. Chief Engineer Eun-ji stood beneath the Iron Monsoon, watching as her maintenance team completed their pre-flight checks. The destroyer was 15 years old, considered ancient by galactic standards, but Eun-ji kept it running like new. She knew every pipe, every wire, every quirk of its reactor core. The ship was more than metal and electronics to her. It was home. "How's she looking?" Captain Min-seo asked, walking up behind her. "Ready to fly and ready to fight," Eun-ji replied. "I've pushed the reactor output to 112%. We'll have full combat acceleration available, but I can't promise it'll stay that way for more than 6 hours of continuous operation." 6 hours is longer than most fights last, Min-seo said. She trusted Eun-ji completely. The engineer had saved the Iron Monsoon twice before, once from a reactor breach and once from a navigation computer failure in the middle of a debris field. Across the hangar, Lieutenant Jae-hyun was conducting final tactical briefings with the weapons officers from all 6 ships. He had calculated 17 different combat scenarios based on available intelligence about Krathic raiders. Most of his scenarios ended with human victory, but 3 of them resulted in heavy casualties. He didn't share those 3 with anyone except Commander Tae-yang. "The Krathic use fast attack ships," Jae-hyun explained, pointing at holographic displays. "They rely on speed and numbers. Their weapons are mainly plasma-based, which means they're effective at close range but lose power over distance. Our railguns and missile systems outrange them by a factor of 3. "What about their armor?" asked one of the weapons officers. "Minimal. Their ships are built for raiding, not sustained combat. They expect to hit soft targets and run before anyone can respond. They've never fought a prepared military force." "They're about to," Min-seo said with a cold smile. The fleet launched at 0630 hours. 6 ships accelerating away from Titan at speeds that would have crushed most alien species. Humans could withstand higher G-forces than almost any other known species. A gift from evolving on a high-gravity world. What felt like a hard push to a human crew would literally kill a Velen or attrition. Commander Taeyang sat in the command chair of his flagship, the carrier Dawn's Light. Around him, dozens of officers monitored systems and coordinated fleet movements. The bridge was designed for efficiency, with every station within easy reach and every display showing critical information. Status report, Taeyang ordered. All ships report green across the board, replied his first officer. Course is set for the Theta wormhole. ETA 14 minutes. Dr. Jiwan, any updates on our target? Jiwan had been brought along specifically to communicate with the Velans if they survived. She sat at a communications station, still analyzing the original distress call and everything in the database about Velan culture. The Velans evolved on a low-gravity moon orbiting a gas giant, she reported. They're aquatic with thin carapaces. Physically, they're fragile. A strong handshake could break their bones. They've been spacefaring for about 200 years, but they've never developed military technology. Their entire civilization is built around research and art. No weapons at all? Taeyang asked. None. They have some basic defensive shields on their ships, but that's it. Against the Krathic, they're completely helpless. The thought made Taeyang angry, not at the Velans, but at a galaxy that would let peaceful beings be slaughtered, while committees debated proper procedures. The Galactic Assembly talked endlessly about peace and civilization, but they had no teeth, no ability to act quickly, no willingness to make hard choices. The Theta wormhole appeared on the view screen as a swirling mass of distorted space. It was beautiful and terrifying, a shortcut through reality that could save them days of travel or tear their ships apart. The wormhole was unstable, fluctuating every few seconds. Navigation through it required split-second timing and a lot of courage. All ships tighten formation, Taeyang ordered. Follow my lead. Once we're in, maintain exact distance. If anyone starts to drift, the gravity shear will rip them in half. Yes, sir, came the acknowledgments from 5 other captains. The Dawn's Light entered the wormhole first. Reality twisted. The view screen showed impossible colors and shapes that human eyes weren't designed to process. Alarms beeped as the ship's structure groaned under stress. The journey through the wormhole would only take 90 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Corpsman Dong Ha sat in the medical bay, strapped into a crash couch as the ship bucked and shook. He was a combat medic, trained to treat injuries in the middle of battles. He had seen terrible things, put people back together who should have died, and held the hands of those he couldn't save. If they ended up fighting the Krathic, he knew he would be busy. Next to him, younger medics were praying. Dong Ha didn't pray. He checked his equipment instead, making sure every tool was secured and every medicine was properly stored. Prayer was fine, but preparation saved lives. The fleet emerged from the wormhole exactly on target. Jae-hyun had calculated the exit point perfectly. They were now in the outer edges of the Kepler sector, still 12 hours away from the distress signal's origin, but much closer than they had been. All ships report successful transit, the first officer announced. 2 ships showing minor hull stress, but nothing critical. Good, Taeyang said. Reduce speed to cruise and begin sensor sweeps. I want to know what we're flying into. Over the next several hours, the fleet gathered intelligence. Long-range sensors picked up dozens of ships clustered around a debris field. Some of the debris was clearly organic, pieces of ships that had been torn apart. The tactical computers identified at least 37 Krathic raider vessels, all surrounding 5 larger ships that matched Velan design. The Velan convoy is still there, Jae-hyun reported, but 4 of the 5 ships show heavy damage. Life signs are present but weakening. How long do they have? Taeyang asked. Hours, maybe less. The Krathic are taking their time, probably looting the ships and processing prisoners. Minseo's voice came over the command channel. Sir, I'm picking up Krathic communication chatter. They're talking about us. Put it through, Taeyang ordered. The translated Krathic speech was harsh and mocking. They had detected the human fleet's arrival and were laughing about it. One voice, presumably their leader, was especially contemptuous. Let the Deathworlders come, the voice said. We've heard the stories. Primitives who just learned to fly. They have 6 ships? We have 37. This will be amusing. The channel went silent on the human side. Then Minseo spoke, her voice cold and hard. Sir, request permission to show them exactly how amusing we can be. Taeyang considered the tactical situation. 37 ships against 6. On paper it looked bad. But numbers didn't tell the whole story. The Krathic ships were fast but lightly armed and armored. They were built for raiding defenseless targets, not for real combat. Human ships were built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. All ships, battle stations, Taeyang ordered. We're going in. Rules of engagement are as follows. Any ship that fires on us or continues attacking the Velans is a valid target. Any ship that powers down weapons and retreats will not be pursued. Make it clear that we're offering them one chance to walk away. And if they don't take it, Mincio asked. Then we remind the galaxy why Earth is called a death world. The fleet accelerated toward the battlefield. 6 ships against 37, carrying crews who had been forged in Earth's brutal crucible. The Krathic raiders waited, confident in their numbers, unaware that they were about to learn a hard lesson about predators. The Velan research convoy drifted in the darkness like wounded animals. Captain Shilara watched her sensors from the bridge of the science vessel. Calm reflection, knowing these might be her final moments. 3 of her sister ships had already gone dark, their crews either dead or taken by the Krathic raiders. Her own ship had hull breaches on 4 decks, life support was failing, and fires still burned in the engine compartment. Around the convoy, Krathic raider ships circled like sharks. They were in no hurry. They had all the time in the world to pick apart their prey. Shilara had watched them board the morning study 2 hours ago. The screams over the communication channels had lasted 17 minutes before going silent. Captain, I'm detecting new ships approaching, her sensor officer reported. His voice was weak, resigned. More raiders probably, or perhaps these were the slavers coming to collect their prizes. How many? Shilara asked. 6 vessels, medium to large size. They're not Krathic design. That got Shilara's attention. She pulled herself to the sensor station. Her movement slow in the low gravity her species preferred. The approaching ships were indeed different. Angular, dark, built with obvious military purpose. Their energy signatures were strange, powerful in a way that seemed almost aggressive. Are they more pirates? She asked. I don't know, Captain. But they're broadcasting on open channels. The message came through in heavily accented but understandable Galactic Common. Krathic vessels. This is Commander Taeyang of the Terran Defense Coalition. Cease your attack immediately and withdraw. You have 60 seconds to comply. This is your only warning. Shilara felt something she hadn't felt in hours. Hope. The Krathic response was immediate and mocking. Their leader, a vicious creature named Vexthor, laughed over the open channel. Terrans? The Deathworld primitives? You have 6 ships. We have 37. Turn around and run home, little apes, before we add your bones to our collection. To emphasize his point, Vexthor ordered his ships to fire on the last intact Velan vessel, the Quiet Observation. Plasma bolts tore through her weakened shields and ripped into her hull. Explosions blossomed along her side. Shilara watched in horror as her sister ship began to break apart. Then the humans opened fire. The Iron Monsoon, Captain Minceo's destroyer, was the first to engage. Her railgun spun up to full speed and fired a salvo of solid projectiles at velocities that approached a fraction of light speed. The first Krathic raider simply ceased to exist, torn apart before its crew even registered the threat. The second raider tried to evade but wasn't fast enough. The railgun round punched through its forward section, through its reactor and out the back, leaving a perfectly straight hole in a rapidly expanding cloud of debris. All ships. Weapons free. Commander Taeyang's voice was calm, almost cold. Show them what Earth taught us. The human fleet accelerated at 15 Gs, a force that would have killed most species instantly. The Krathic ships were faster in straight-line speed, but human vessels could change direction violently without warning, their crews protected by inertial dampeners and crash couches designed for Earth's brutal gravity. Lieutenant Jaehyun coordinated the attack from the dawn's light, his tactical display showing all 43 ships in the battle. His fingers moved across holographic controls, designating targets, calculating firing solutions, and predicting enemy movements 3 steps ahead. Target priority Alpha mark, he said calmly. Fire! Missile pods on all 6 human ships opened simultaneously. Dozens of missiles streaked across space, their guidance systems locked on specific Krathic vessels. The Krathic point defense tried to intercept, but human missiles were designed to penetrate defenses far more sophisticated than raider weapons. They had been built to fight other humans, after all. 5 more Krathic ships exploded within seconds. The raiders began to panic, their formation breaking apart as they tried to scatter. But the human fleet had already anticipated the movement. Minseo's iron monsoon swept left, cutting off the retreat path of 8 raiders. The carrier Dawn's Light moved right, its fighter squadrons deploying to harass the enemy flanks. The frigates held the center, their defensive systems creating an impenetrable shield wall. Vexthor finally realized his mistake. These weren't primitives or easy prey. These were apex predators from a world that bred killers. He ordered his flagship forward, trying to ram the Dawn's Light. If he could destroy the human carrier, perhaps he could still salvage this disaster. Minseo saw the move instantly. "He's going for the flagship," she reported over the command channel. "Intercept course plotted." "Negative," Taeyang replied. "Your ship is too valuable." "With respect, sir, so is yours," Minseo said. She was already moving, pushing the Iron Monsoon's engines beyond their rated capacity. Yoonji, down in engineering, saw the power demand and didn't even complain. She just gave the engines everything they had. The Iron Monsoon crossed in front of the Dawn's Light with seconds to spare. Vexthor's flagship, a massive raider cruiser called the Blood Prize, smashed into the destroyer's reinforced bow section. The impact was catastrophic. Both ships tumbled through space, metal screaming and tearing. On the Iron Monsoon's bridge, Minseo was thrown against her restraints hard enough to crack ribs. Around her, consoles exploded and crew members screamed. But the ship held together. Barely. On the Blood Prize, Vexthor's bridge was a tomb. The Krathic crew hadn't been strapped in. They didn't use crash couches or restraints because their ships weren't designed for violent maneuvers. When the collision hit, they were thrown around like toys. Vexthor himself was impaled on a piece of his own command console. Corpsman Dongha was already moving before the Iron Monsoon stopped tumbling. He grabbed his medical kit and rushed to the bridge, stepping over debris and sparking wires. He found Minseo conscious but bleeding, trying to give orders through gritted teeth. "Captain, you need medical attention," Dongha said. "I need a damage report," Minseo corrected. "Am I dying?" "Not immediately." "Then damage report first." She was stubborn. Dongha respected that. The battle lasted 23 minutes total. By the end, 31 Krathic ships were destroyed, 6 were captured with disabled engines and dead crews, and 0 escaped. The human fleet suffered damage but no losses. 12 crew members were dead, 47 wounded, but all 6 ships were still operational. Shilara watched it all from her damaged bridge in stunned silence. She had seen battles before in historical records and simulations. Felon science vessels sometimes studied military conflicts as sociological phenomena. But she had never imagined combat could be so brutal, so efficient, so overwhelming. The humans hadn't just won. They had dominated. They moved through the Krathic fleet like they were harvesting crops, methodical and unstoppable. Their weapons were devastating. Their tactics were flawless. Their willingness to sacrifice one ship to save another spoke of a military culture that valued the collective over the individual. "Captain, we're being hailed," her communications officer reported. "By the Terrans." Shilara straightened her carapace as best she could. "Put them through." Commander Taeyang's face appeared on the screen. He was human, male, with gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes held warmth as well as weariness. "Captain Shilara, I presume? Your distress call was received. We apologize for the delay. You came," Shilara managed to say. "The message was meant for the Galactic Assembly. How did you—" "We intercepted it," Taeyang said simply, "and we decided that waiting for official channels was unacceptable." "How many survivors do you have?" 1,247, Shilara replied. Her voice broke slightly. "We had 1,800 when the attack began." "I'm sorry we couldn't arrive sooner," Taeyang said, and he sounded like he genuinely meant it. "We're sending medical teams and repair crews to your ships. My xenolinguist, Dr. Jiwan, will coordinate with you on any special requirements your people need." "Why?" Shilara asked. "Why would you risk yourselves for us? We're strangers. Your species barely knows ours." Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because someone sent a distress call. Because people needed help. On Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We couldn't do nothing." Shilara looked at this human commander, this representative of the species the galaxy called Deathworlders. They were supposed to be violent, primitive, dangerous. And they were all those things. She had just watched them destroy an enemy fleet with terrifying efficiency. But they were also here, offering help, showing kindness, risking themselves for strangers. Perhaps, Shilara thought, the galaxy had misunderstood what being a Deathworlder truly meant. The hours after the battle were organized chaos. Human medical teams moved through the damaged Velan ships in environmental suits, their movements careful and slow. The Velans were fragile creatures, and even a bump from a human-empowered armor could cause serious injury. Medic Haywan floated through the corridors of the calm reflection, her scanner identifying injured Velans and prioritizing treatment. She had spent the last 3 hours working non-stop, treating broken carapaces, internal bleeding, and radiation exposure. The Velans were terrified of her at first. She was nearly twice their size, wearing armor that made her look even larger, carrying equipment that looked like weapons. But fear turned to trust when she gently lifted a wounded Velan scientist and carefully administered pain medication. Word spread quickly among the survivors. The humans were helping. The humans were kind. "This one needs immediate surgery," Haywan reported into her communicator. "Severe internal damage. I'm stabilizing him, but he won't make it without a proper medical bay." "Bring him to the Dawn's Light," came the response. "We've converted Cargo Bay 3 into a temporary hospital. Dr. Jiwan is there with Velan medical staff, setting up compatible equipment." Haywan carefully transported the injured Velan to the human carrier. The journey was slow, cautious, ensuring no further harm came to her patient. When she arrived at Cargo Bay 3, she was surprised by what she saw. The humans had transformed the space into something that looked almost like a Velan medical facility, with water tanks, low-gravity zones, and soft lighting. Dr. Jiwan had worked with the surviving Velan doctors to create an environment where both species could work together. "Over here," called one of the Velan doctors. A female named Rinsha. She gestured to an empty tank. "We'll need to immerse him immediately. The pressure differential is critical for his species." Haywan lowered the injured Velan into the tank with movements so gentle they seemed impossible for someone in heavy armor. Years of training had taught her that strength without control was just violence. Medicine required both power and precision. Captain Shilara stood in the makeshift hospital, watching humans and Velans work side by side. It should have been impossible. The two species had almost nothing in common. Humans breathed oxygen and nitrogen. Velans required a complex mix that included trace amounts of methane. Humans could withstand multiple Gs of force. Velans needed low gravity or they risked organ damage. Humans were predators who had evolved by hunting. Velans were peaceful beings who had evolved by hiding. Yet here they were, saving lives together. Commander Taeyang entered the medical bay, moving slowly to avoid startling anyone. He found Shilara and approached carefully, keeping his distance. He had learned from Dr. Jiwan that Velans found close proximity from larger species threatening. "Captain, we need to discuss what happens next," Taeyang said. "Next?" Shilara made a bubbling sound that Jiwan had translated as a laugh. "Commander, my ships are barely functional. My crews are traumatized. I have no idea what happens next." "We can escort you back to Velan space," Taeyang offered. "It will take several days, but your ships should hold together with our engineering support." "And then what?" "We pretend this didn't happen. The Krathic will come again. They always do. The Galactic Assembly will file complaints and investigate and discuss, but nothing will change. Nothing ever changes." There was bitterness in Shilara's voice. Taeyang recognized it. It was the bitterness of someone who had asked for help and been ignored too many times. "Tell me about the Assembly's response times," Taeyang said. "How long do they usually take?" "Weeks, sometimes months. They have committees and approval processes. By the time they send help, the victims are usually already gone." Taeyang nodded. He had suspected as much. "Have many other species been attacked like this?" "Yes, dozens. The Krathic prey on peaceful civilizations. The Tarhan Collective, the Sori Alliance, the Mirian Confederacy, all of them have lost people to raiders. All of them have sent distress calls. The Assembly sends investigators after the fact and writes reports. But actual help? Actual protection? That never comes." While this conversation happened, Ensign Bora was conducting first contact protocols with the rescued Velans. She was young, only 23, and this was her first deep space assignment. She had trained for diplomatic situations, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of meeting aliens who had just survived a massacre. "Please, just rest," Bora said gently to a Velan engineer who kept trying to return to his ship. "Your vessel is being repaired. You don't need to work right now." "I should be useful," the Velan insisted. "You saved us. We must repay the debt." "There's no debt," Bora said. "You needed help. We provided it. That's enough. The Velen stared at her with large dark eyes. Your species is strange. Everyone in the galaxy says humans are dangerous, violent, but you're here helping us. You fight like demons but care like, I don't know the word, friends? Bo-Ra suggested. Yes, friends. In another section of the fleet, Intelligence Officer Su-Jin was interrogating a captured Krathic raider named Nektal. The creature was bound in a human brig, designed to hold prisoners who might try to escape. Nektal was injured but alive, pulled from the wreckage of his ship by human rescue teams. Why did you attack the Velens? Su-Jin asked through a translator. Because they're weak, Nektal said simply. Because they have technology worth stealing. Because we can. And the Galactic Assembly doesn't stop you? Nektal made a sound that might have been laughter. The Assembly? They write angry letters. They pass resolutions. They're weak too. The galaxy is full of prey animals pretending to be civilized. The Krathic Dominion just acknowledges reality. So you've attacked other species besides the Velens? Many times. For decades. It's profitable. Su-Jin felt her anger rising but kept her face neutral. How many distress calls do you think are sent every year? Dozens, maybe hundreds. Doesn't matter. By the time anyone responds, we're long gone with our prizes. Su-Jin ended the interrogation and immediately took her findings to Commander Tae-Yang. She found him on the bridge of the Dawn's Light reviewing damage reports. Sir, I've finished questioning the prisoners, Su-Jin reported. The situation is worse than we thought. The Krathic have been raiding peaceful species throughout the sector for years. The Galactic Assembly knows about it but does nothing effective. They're paralyzed by bureaucracy. Tae-Yang closed his eyes briefly. He had suspected this, but confirmation made it real. How many attacks? The prisoner estimates dozens per year. Potentially hundreds of victims who sent distress calls that were never answered in time. And the Assembly's response? Investigations after the fact. Reports. Sanctions that aren't enforced. They're not equipped to handle real threats. They're designed for diplomacy between peaceful species, not for dealing with predators. Before Tae-Yang could respond, his communications officer interrupted. Sir, priority message from Earth Command. Put it through. The message was from Admiral Dae-Jung, Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Coalition. His face appeared on the main screen looking stern. Commander Tae-Yang, I've received multiple communications from the Galactic Assembly. They're demanding your immediate return to Earth for disciplinary proceedings. They claim you violated non-interference protocols and committed acts of war without authorization. Tae-Yang expected this. Yes, sir. They're also demanding that you stand trial in their courts for your actions. Understood, sir. Admiral Dae-Jung was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I've reviewed your mission logs. You saved over 1,200 lives. You eliminated a pirate fleet that's been terrorizing peaceful species for years. You did exactly what the TDC was created to do, protect those who cannot protect themselves. Thank you, sir. I'm not finished. The Assembly is furious. Multiple species are calling for sanctions against Earth. They're threatening to expel humanity from the galactic community. Tae-Yang felt his stomach drop. Sir, I take full responsibility. I know you do. That's why I'm going to the Assembly myself. We're going to have a very direct conversation about their idea of civilization versus ours. In the meantime, escort the Velens home and prepare a full report. Every detail, every decision, every casualty. We're going to need it. The transmission ended. Tae-Yang sat back in his chair, suddenly feeling very tired. He had saved lives, but might have damaged humanity's place in the galaxy. Was it worth it? He looked at the medical bay feeds, showing humans and Velens working together, saving lives together. Yes, it was absolutely worth it. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session. The chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats for representatives from 247 different species. At its center floated a crystalline sphere where speakers addressed the Assembly. Today, that sphere contained Councillor Vethris, leader of the Assembly and representative of the Crystallian Consensus. We are here to address the actions of the Terran Defense Coalition, Vethris announced, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. Specifically, the unauthorized military action taken by Commander Tae-Yang against vessels of the Krathic Dominion. Ambassador Kyung-Soo sat in the human delegation seats, wearing the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. He was a former military officer himself, having served 20 years before transitioning to diplomacy. He understood both worlds, war and peace, and he knew that today would require both skill sets. The Terran forces intercepted a distress call meant for this assembly. Vethris continued. They then took it upon themselves to respond with military force, resulting in the destruction of 31 vessels and the deaths of over 4,000 beings. 4,000 pirates, Kyung-soo said quietly, but his voice carried. 4,000 raiders who were in the process of massacring peaceful researchers. That is not relevant to the question of procedure, Vethris replied. The Terrans acted without authorization from this body. They violated non-interference protocols. They engaged in acts of war without exhausting diplomatic options. The chamber filled with voices as representatives began arguing. Some species supported the assembly's position. Others, particularly those who had lost people to raiders, were less certain. The debate went on for 2 hours before Vethris finally called for order. We will now hear testimony regarding this incident. First, the Krathic Dominion has sent a representative. A hologram appeared in the central sphere. The Krathic diplomat was smaller than the raiders, more refined, but his eyes held the same cold calculation. The Terran aggression was unprovoked and illegal. My people demand reparations and the extradition of Commander Tae Yang to face justice in our courts. Justice? Kyung-soo stood up. Your fleet attacked unarmed science vessels. Your people have been raiding peaceful species for decades. Where was justice for them? Order, Vethris demanded. Ambassador Kyung-soo, you will have your turn to speak. The next testimony came from Captain Shilara. She floated in a water-filled sphere that had been specially prepared for her species. Her voice was translated as she spoke. I speak on behalf of the 1,247 Velans who are alive because of Commander Tae Yang and his crew. We sent a distress call to this assembly 3 days before the attack began. We sent updates every 6 hours. No response came. No help arrived. We were abandoned. Murmurs filled the chamber. Shilara continued. The humans received our call by accident. They had no obligation to help us. They chose to anyway. They risked their lives for strangers. They fought against overwhelming numbers to save us. If this assembly considers that a crime, then I must question what this body truly represents. Several species applauded. Others remained silent. Vethris looked uncomfortable. Captain Shilara, we understand your gratitude, but surely you must acknowledge that proper procedures exist for a reason. If every species took military action whenever they felt it necessary, chaos would result. Counselor, Shilara replied, her voice sharp. Chaos is watching your colleagues die while waiting for help that never comes. Chaos is being enslaved because committees cannot make decisions. The humans brought order, not chaos. They brought justice. Dr. Jiwon was called next. She presented detailed evidence gathered from the human fleet's investigation. Database records showed hundreds of distress calls over the past 20 years. Most had been received by the assembly. Few had been answered in time. The average response time for this body is 3 weeks, Jiwon stated. The average duration of a pirate raid is 6 hours. By the time you send help, the victims are already gone. You're not responding to emergencies. You're documenting tragedies. We have procedures, Vethris insisted. We have protocols designed to prevent unnecessary violence. And how many people have died while you followed those protocols? Jiwon asked. The Velan convoy was the 47th distress call this year alone. How many of the previous 46 did you save? Silence answered her question. Admiral Daejung appeared via hologram, his image projected into the central sphere. He wore the full dress uniform of the TDC, medals earned over 40 years of service displayed on his chest. Members of the Assembly, I am Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Coalition. I take full responsibility for the actions of my subordinate, Commander Tae Yang. He followed the principles that humanity holds sacred. When someone calls for help, you answer. When innocents are threatened, you protect them. When evil acts openly, you stand against it. These principles are admirable in theory, Vethris said, but in practice they lead to violence and conflict. Do they? Daejung asked. Or do they lead to saved lives? You've had peace here in the core worlds for centuries, but that peace has been built on the suffering of species too far away for you to hear their screams. The Velans screamed. We heard them. We responded. If that makes us criminals in your eyes, so be it. Kyung-soo finally took the central sphere for humanity's official statement. He looked around at the assembled species, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. You call us Deathworlders like it's an insult, he began. You're right. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Gravity that would crush most of you. Weather that could freeze or burn. Predators that saw us as food. Diseases that killed millions. We survived all of it. He paused, letting his words sink in. We learned to be strong because weakness meant death. We learned to fight because running wasn't always possible. We learned to protect our own because nobody else would. And yes, we learned to be violent. Earth taught us violence, but Earth also taught us something else. It taught us that survival means standing together. That the strong protect the weak. That when someone falls, you help them up. Kyung-soo brought up a holographic display showing the faces of the 1,247 rescued Velans. These people are alive because we apply those lessons. They're alive because we didn't wait for committees to approve rescue operations. They're alive because when we heard someone screaming, we ran toward the sound instead of away from it. He turned specifically to Vethris. You built this assembly on the principles of peace and cooperation. Those are good principles, but peace without the ability to enforce it is just surrender. Cooperation without the willingness to act is just cowardice. We're offering you a third option. And what option is that? Vethris asked. The Deathworlder doctrine, Kyung-soo said. Earth will respond to distress calls that this assembly cannot or will not answer in time. We'll operate as an independent rapid response force. Any species can decline our assistance. Any species can continue relying solely on assembly protection, but the option will be there. You're asking permission to act as vigilantes, Vethris said. No. We're informing you that we will not stand idle while people die. We're offering to coordinate with you, to share intelligence, to work within your framework where possible. But if it comes down to following your procedures or saving lives, we'll save lives every time. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species were outraged. Others were supportive. Many were uncertain. The argument continued for hours, with votes taken and retaken. Finally, a compromise emerged. The Assembly would officially recognize the Terran Rapid Response Initiative. Humanity would be allowed to respond to distress calls, but would be required to report all actions to the Assembly within 24 hours. Species could opt out of human protection if they chose, and humanity would be held accountable for any abuses of this authority. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. 6 months later, Commander Tae-yang stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Defiant Dawn. The carrier was state-of-the-art, built specifically for rapid response missions. Around it flew an entire battle group, ready to launch at a moment's notice. Hyun-woo, now promoted to senior communications officer, monitored the channels. He had been transferred to the Defiant Dawn specifically because of his role in intercepting the original Velan distress call. Sir, incoming distress call, Hyun-woo reported. Anteri sector. Raiders attacking a mining colony. Tae-yang didn't hesitate. Sound general quarters. Plot intercept course. Inform the colony that help is coming. Lieutenant Jae-hyun, now Tae-yang's executive officer, pulled up tactical displays. ETA 4 hours if we push the engines. Then push them, Tae-yang ordered. And send a message to the raiders. Tell them that the Terran Defense Coalition is responding. Tell them they have one chance to withdraw. And if they don't? Jae-hyun asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we remind them why Earth is called a death world. The Defiant Dawn and its battle group accelerated toward the Antares sector. Behind them, across human space, other rapid response groups stood ready. The galaxy had learned a new reality. Distress calls would be answered. The weak would be protected, and the predators who preyed on the innocent would face creatures that had evolved on a world where being the apex predator was the only way to survive. In the 6 months since the Velan rescue, pirate attacks in the Galactic Rim had dropped by 73%. Not because the pirates had reformed, but because they had learned fear. The Deathworlders were listening. The Deathworlders would come, and when they came, they brought the fury of a planet that had spent 10,000 years teaching its children how to fight. Captain Shilara watched the news from Velan space. Her people had erected a monument to the humans who had saved them. It showed Commander Tae-yang and his crew, immortalized in stone and light. Beneath it, an inscription in both Velan and Terran languages read, "They heard us when no one else would. They came when no one else could. They fought when no one else dared. May all civilizations learn from their example." The galaxy was changing, slowly, carefully, but definitely changing, and at the center of that change were the humans, the species from the death world, teaching the rest of the galaxy what their harsh planet had taught them, that sometimes the right hands to receive a cry for help are the hands that know how to fight.